she's fed this character of Candyman, and she creates this figure herself.
But why would she kidnap a baby and keep it in like the recesses?
I mean, look, obviously,
of
So why did she kill the dog?
Yeah.
We only ever see Candyman through Helen. Candyman doesn't actually exist as a
Yeah, and he
fleshed out
even
figure.
gets blamed for, or she gets blamed for his crimes. Almost like he doesn't really exist outside of...
So obviously the argument is that she is Candyman, right? There is no actual Candyman. She is the killer. She is the person who's done the crimes. The movie's actually, I mean, I've seen it now a few times, and I actually hadn't realized just how overt it is that she is the killer, because obviously she knows where the baby is from the beginning. She has the visions, let's say, but obviously as it unravels, it's clear that she's the one who has taken the baby. She's killed the Rottweiler. The blood on her, they say in one scene, is the dog's blood. And then every step of the way, obviously there's a scene where she gets shown security footage where she thinks Candyman's in the room. Obviously he's not.
Okay.
That was what was interesting, because at that point, in my head, when I was watching it, I thought, oh, it's probably like some kind of supernatural figure, Candyman, it's all existed. And then you see the footage, it's like, oh, he's actually not there.
Exactly. He's actually not present. And to make it even clearer, right, there's one scene in particular that's, I think, super telling. And I went back and I rewatched it again. She's having dinner with her boyfriend, and there seems to be, it looks like another professor.
That's the professor who retells the old story.
Exactly.
Of Daniel
One thing that's important to note is that her image of Candyman is born after that moment.
Interesting.
Prior to that moment, we don't ever see Candyman. So the suggestion is that she's fed this character of Candyman, and she creates this figure herself. Obviously, the story of the original story of the lynching that you mentioned, let's take that as it really happened within the context of the movie. The guy retells a real event, which I'm sure happened multiple times, especially during that era of America. It probably happened multiple times of a slave or a son of a slave falls in love and is lynched. She creates that figure.
What do you think Helen's motivation would be in because it doesn't seem, if Helen is the Candyman, what exactly is her motivation for kidnapping a baby and doing this stuff?
Well, that's what I said. I think it is that I think the movie's trying to suggest that there's a white savior complex at play.
Well, like she kidnaps it to give it back.
Yeah, because there's a I mean, it's like
But why would she kidnap a baby and keep it in like the recesses?
I mean, look, obviously,
So why did she kill the dog?
Obviously, when we discuss this, I mean, this is obviously a horror movie with all the. I mean, the film very clearly suggests that there is some sort of abnormal, paranormal, thing at play. And how loud that burp was on camera. There's people in Sweden just heard my stomach growl there. But there's obviously something paranormal at play. She's almost been possessed by the story of Candyman. And obviously there's a suggestion on top of that there is something mystical going on, that she just wakes up and she's in this space. But in terms of her rationale for it, I mean, the movie's kind of clear on it, which is that she feels guilty, right? She feels guilty from the outset of the movie. She feels guilty about her own privilege. Obviously, she's struggling in her own life. She thinks her boyfriend's cheating, and it turns out he is actually by the end. But the overriding thing is there's a kind of guilt. And I think what's interesting in particular is, obviously, she murders her friend, who doesn't really say where the friend is from, but there's a suggestion that the friend is African-American or she's from a mixed background. But it's one of the first people that she outright murders. And then obviously from there, her sort of downfall begins. And there's definitely a kind of almost a Dracula-ness to it.
Sure.
Which is that she goes to this castle and visits this kind of, in her mind, obviously, like I said, if they're the same person or not, she manifests him one way or another. And obviously he exists in terms of his symbology is there. Obviously he's graffitied on and so on. Mm-hmm. And the fact that happens while she's having trouble in her own sexual life, obviously she's her boyfriend, early on, he catches her sort of with a student being a bit too friendly, which he ends up actually being with that student. That obviously crosses over well, and I think 100%, I think it works well. It does remind me a bit, so people who've read the actual novel Dracula, I wouldn't say it's like the movies, but there is that element that she almost is in awe of him, but completely fears him. And there is a kind of sexual tension, which is, I think, for sure in Candyman.
Definitely his dialogue is like you will feel this pain.
And there's none of that in the new one. Yeah, exactly.
It's like a Victorian vernacular.
But there's none of that in the new one.
No, absolutely none.
There's none of that. That tension is completely stripped away.
He's got zero dimensions. The Candyman in the
it's another thing I don't like about the new one. But I agree 100%. I think the sexual element of it is done well, and it's almost like Helen is sort of a surrogate for the original. I think her name's Carolyn, the original girl he impregnates. And there's that famous line where he even writes. He says, "It was always you, Helen," which actually might even to be about the fact that she's obviously done all the killings as well, right? But
it could be way of Candyman's like blaming Carolyn in some way.
Yes,
for potentially bringing this on to his death. But maybe that's reading into
a little
it a bit
bit,
much.
Although I think there is that element of it, but I think the film it does it in a way that you can read into it without spoiling the movie. There's enough given to you there for it to you can be presented with it without it being the only thing that you can think. Okay, which is often a sign of a good movie.